All right, Bardtic here, finally back with some more videos. Obviously, I did take a little break, with Intrepid kind of having their nose to the grindstone and not giving us too much new information. I took some time to kind of just brainstorm ideas for new videos and kind of stuff to do until we get more in-game content. So moving forward, I am hoping to have at least one video a week for you guys. But anyway, so if you guys watched today's live stream, or if you've checked Discord, or watched the numerous videos from the other fantastic content creators in this community, you probably know that Intrepid has decided to convert Ashes of Creation to an Unreal Engine 5 project. So Unreal Engine 5 released their early access trailer about a year ago, and the official version is supposed to release sometime Q1 of 2022. So first in this video, we're going to do a quick breakdown of what this means for the development of Ashes of Creation before going more in depth into some of the features of Unreal Engine 5 and specifically what those are going to mean. But anyway, let's play the clip of Steven in-game in Unreal Engine 5 and just see how gorgeous it looks.
I mean, look at this. I love the effects that Jim did with the falling rocks. It's like a stream of dirt. What is happening to these rocks? Oh yes, shower me. Shower me.
So Steven's being a little goofy as usual, but this is Unreal Engine 5. So the entire project has already been converted. That doesn't mean, there aren't some bugs and things to still flesh out. But starting in the new year, when the team gets back from the holidays, the entire team will be working within Unreal Engine 5. The game is obviously in one of its first passes in Unreal Engine 5, and it already looks better than it ever has. I mean, the lighting is obviously more realistic, and if you look at the terrain around Steven here, it feels more realistic because it's actually high-definition objects rather than just smooth surfaces that use basically clever textures to make it look realistic. And we'll get into why this is actually possible with Unreal Engine 5 in just a bit, but let's do the quick breakdown and answer basically the questions that are on everyone's mind. I think the main question everyone is asking is, how is this going to affect the timeline? Is this going to push the game back another 2 years? The answer is it shouldn't. There should be some work up front to get it converted over. Luckily, Ashes is in an early enough stage of development that shouldn't be too complicated. But the tools of Unreal Engine 5 actually allow them to build the world faster. A lot of the stuff is done on the rendering side, so it shouldn't be affecting the back end. Steven said it's not really affecting any of the networking stuff they've done. And that's what's interesting, right? Is we were basically told that Alpha 1 was mostly networking and server-side stuff. And if they had in the back of their mind that they might be switching to Unreal Engine 5 soon, it makes a lot of sense why that was their focus, because they wanted to nail that down and not spend too much time on building the rest of the game, which would have to then be rebuilt when they switch to Unreal Engine 5. We'll go more in depth into the tools that Unreal Engine 5 offers the developers that will allow them to actually build the world faster in a little bit. The second question everyone wants to know is, how is this going to affect the recommended computer specs? Are you going to have to upgrade to a fancy computer to even be able to play this game? And the answer is yes and no. So this game is probably at least 2 years from release, and by that time, we'll probably have a whole new generation of graphics cards, and who knows where the technology is going to be. And so yes, if you're still running on a 970, like at this point a 3-generation-old graphics card, there's a good chance you are going to have to upgrade. However, if you have a 30 series or even a 20 series, there's a good chance you're going to be just fine. And, by the time the game actually launches, you should be able to pick one of those up for a decent price. The nice thing, however, is a lot of the advantages of Unreal Engine 5 are on the optimization side. So you're able to get a much more realistic look with a lot less hardware requirements. But Steven has said he will keep us updated on the minimum specs, and if they change, he'll let us know. So let's get into some of these tools that Unreal Engine 5 offers. And the two primary ones are Lumen and Nanite. And why don't we start with Lumen? Lumen is a global illumination system. How does it work? Honestly, I have no idea. And a disclaimer, I am not a developer. I'm not a programmer. So I've done a bunch of research and I have a pretty good idea. But if I get anything wrong, please just let me know and I'll correct myself. But Lumen allows for very realistic dynamic lighting. It saves the environmental artists a lot of time because previously there were two ways to get somewhat realistic lighting. And that was light baking and then ray tracing. And obviously ray tracing has a lot of downsides. It's a very expensive technology, which means it requires very expensive hardware to both play and develop with. The other way, light baking is not dynamic lighting. So actually you would create the environment and then create a light source, and then you would actually run a program that would bounce that light source off a bunch of different surfaces and actually change the textures within the object to reflect that light. So the lighting didn't actually come from a light source and never changed. It was just baked into the textures of the object. So this isn't as big a deal in the outdoors because you generally have, one primary light source, which is the sun, which makes it a lot easier to get realistic lighting. But once you get in like underground, in a cave, in a dungeon, that's when you have multiple light sources and dim lighting, and it's a lot harder and a lot more time consuming to get something that looks realistic. There's also an interesting question that was asked that Steven answered, and we'll play the clip here.
Is UE5 going to change any aspect of class abilities, spells, etc. that need to be completely reworked?
Not that I can think of, no. One thing that might be incorporated as part of the class skills and abilities, going forward is the application of Lumen and how those abilities from a visual effects standpoint kind of interact with the surrounding area and its illumination. That could be interesting. But from a functionality standpoint, no, I wouldn't say that there's going to be any implications from a change to UE5.
So Steven is pretty cryptic with his answers, but you can see here, this is the Unreal Engine 5 trailer, and you can see how the dynamic lighting works and what this allows for in terms of spells. So this just creates some really cool potential for just normal spell effects as they light up areas around you and reflect off of surfaces. But it also introduces some potentially really cool utility spells and interactions. So if you're delving into a dark dungeon, you may need to bring some kind of mage with an orb of light or something like that. Or maybe you could have a darkness spell that completely blots out all natural light. And unless you have, some form of light generation inside the darkness, you are just blind until the end of the spell. So now let's talk about Nanite. And I don't want to go too into the technical details, but basically every object within a video game is made up of polygons. And most of the time at the base level, it's triangles. Before Nanite, developers would actually have to make many different versions of the same object, and they would render the object differently based on how close or far the camera was from the object. So if the camera was really far away, it would render the version with the least amount of polygons in it. If the camera was really close to the object would render the version with the most amount of polygons. Nanite pretty much just takes care of this process for the developers. It allows them to create one high definition object, drop it in, and then let Nanite take care of the rest. The developers are then able to set the parameters within Nanite that let them determine how many polygons are rendered based on how far or near the camera is to that object. It also allows players with really good and obviously expensive hardware to play in extremely high definition while not making it unplayable for those with less expensive hardware. The main downside of Nanite is it does take more storage and more memory than the classic way of developing a game, but it shouldn't be anything too drastic. One other thing to note is that Nanite only works on stationary objects, so it doesn't work for meshes that bend and move like characters and mounts and creatures within the game. So that may be one of the reasons we've seen so many showcases of mounts and things like that, because they can still work on that while they're transferring everything over to Unreal Engine 5. So there's a discussion going around in the Ashes community a while ago, and that was stylized versus realistic graphics. And people were saying that realistic graphics are never a good idea because eventually the technology outpaces it and it just looks outdated. Whereas if you do stylized graphics, it kind of stands the test of time because, you know, it's got a style that it doesn't necessarily need to be realistic. The idea between Nanite and Lumen is the fact that you can scale this up as technology increases. You can increase the poly counts, you can increase the hardware requirements very easily without doing too many changes in game. So this should hopefully make a game that can 15 years from now still keep up in terms of graphics. Unreal Engine 5 also has its own physics system called Chaos. We saw some of this already implemented in the changes to the character movement and the vaulting, but we're going to get into that in next week's video. Well, if you guys made it this far, then hopefully you enjoyed the content. If you did, please drop a like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. I'm looking forward to making a lot more content, and see you guys all next year.